And that's really what is so awesome about learning human design is because it gets us out of our heads for decision making because we are intellectual beings. We do think and we reason, and the mind is for processing and questioning, but it's not for making decisions because every time your mind makes a decision, it will then also come up with a reason why that's the wrong decision. Human design reveals who you are energetically and who you came here to be. I'm Dana, the human design specialist.
And I'm Haley, the human design newbie. Listen in as we explore how leaning into your authentic self is your ultimate path to success. Today, we're diving into
the authorities.
Dun, dun, dun.
There you go again.
It's my thing now.
Okay. Makes everything sound like it's...
You hate it.
That's okay. If it's going to be your thing, I cannot dissuade you from that, for sure.
Well, let me live my life.
Let you live your life. Absolutely. So, authority. So, we're getting into another layer here, which is fun. We covered the types and the strategy. And so, do you have an understanding of what authority is?
I have no idea what it is other than what you've kind of told me. And then it's the way I think of it is it flavors your strategy.
Influences, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like it gives it a little sprinkle, but I really don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is.
Okay. Well, then you're in the right place.
Wow.
You really are a newbie. Okay. Well, authority, yes, it influences your strategy, but it does not change the strategy. And as we covered before, strategy is inherent to each type. So if you're a manifester, you have your strategies to inform. If you are a generator, it is what, Haley?
Wait to respond.
Correct. If you are a manifesting generator, I feel like I am in a classroom now. You're ready. You're sitting up at attention. Okay, ask me next. Raise my hand. If you're a manifesting generator, your strategy is?
You have to wait to respond, but also you have to wait for the invitation.
Nope.
That's me.
But it's you wait to respond. That's correct.
Wait to respond. Oh, and you have to inform.
Correct. Before taking action. Correct. Okay, so for projectors...
that one's wait for the invitation or the recognition.
Yes, correct. And for reflectors?
I don't remember that one.
They don't. They have to wait 28 days. Lunar cycle.
Oh, that's the moon.
The moon. La Luna. Okay, so those are the strategies of the different types. So authority basically helps you navigate life in tandem with your strategy, but kind of helps you when you're needing to make maybe smaller decisions. Because say, as a projector, the waiting for the invitation, we talked about how these aren't invitations, simple small things. Those are the big invitations where your energy is being called forth and is needed by certain people, and you could potentially at times receive invitations that aren't correct for you. So authority helps you kind of delineate what would be a correct invitation and what wouldn't be. And so same thing with all the other types. Even a generator, while they're waiting to respond to something on a bigger decision level, they can also just take these little, they have the sacral response, which also helps them immensely. And so authority just kind of, while you're waiting for the strategy piece to quote unquote kick in or waiting for the right timing, it kind of helps you navigate these smaller decisions, really. So really, you'll hear that there's lots and lots of different types of authorities because, again, authority is determined by your own particular definition. And so that means what centers are defined are not defined in your chart. It helps determine authority. But when you look at the chart, you see on the one side the spleen, and then you see on the other side the solar plexus. Those are the two triangles that are pointing at each other. And those two really are the two main ways that authority works. It's either in the moment, splenic authority, or it's over time, clarity over time, waiting, emotional authority.
So that's why I'm a splenic projector.
Yes,
So
you have a defined spleen to the root. You have a
so that
defined spleen to the root.
I have a splenic,
Splenic authority.
splenic.
Splenic. It's the spleen, but you have splenic authority.
Yay, English.
English. I know, I was thinking the same thing. We're not splenic or splenic. So an important thing to note, because it can get kind of might feel a little complicated if we dive into all the different types, because there are variations for different types of authority, and I mean variations on authority for the different types is what I should say. And when you're looking at a chart generating software, genetic matrix, like it'll tell you your type, your strategy, and your authority. It spits out some weird authorities sometimes that overcomplicate the matter. And so what I hope to do today is keep it as simple as possible and really note the fact that all the types will either, you're either going to be waiting over time to make a decision, or you can trust your in the moment knowingness. So that's the main two parts. So as we talked about, the splenic center and the emotional solar plexus. Now, these two centers are one of the two places in the chart where it is different from the energy centers in the chakra system. So like the chakra system that I learned about through yoga and meditation and all those studies was 7 centers. Okay. And we're going to do an more in-depth thing on centers. There was 7, but Human Design tells us that in 1781, I believe it is, when they discovered all those outer planets. You know a little bit about astronomy, right?
I know all the
Go ahead,
planets in
Haley.
Spanish.
Go ahead. I knew. I knew you were going to say that, so go ahead. You want to do it? It's your talent. It's your party trick. Go ahead.
Me vaca tremenda Maria Julieta salta una nebulosa. Sorry, Pluto.
Nebulosa.
That's Neptune.
And what's Pluto?
Pluto doesn't have one.
Oh. What happened? I know it's not technically a planet.
Well, when
anymore,
I learned it wasn't a planet, I guess. I don't know.
Oh.
But it's Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune.
And Pluto. Now, in human design and astrology, we still count Pluto as a planet. It still has an influence.
Pluto is the best.
Where were we? Oh,
Learning
okay.
About astrology.
So with the discovery of these outer planets, it kind of shifted the human energy system. And this is where we got the 2 quote unquote extra centers that you see in the human design chart. One being the heart chakra split into 2. So what we know as in human design is the G center and the will center, which is also referred to as the ego center, but I like to refer to it as the will center. And then we have the solar plexus, because in system, it was the head, the ajna center, the third eye, the throat, the heart, the solar plexus, the sacral, and the root. And now we see that the heart chakra split into those 2, like I said, and then the solar plexus center split into the emotional solar plexus center and the spleen. And it's really interesting over time, just more and more that you learn that gets revealed to you, or you just start to understand more, is probably more accurate. But basically those two centers, the spleen and the solar plexus, are about in the moment reactive decision making or more deliberate over time with clarity decision making. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You with me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the splenic center is the center of instinct, survival, health, well-being, timing in the moment.
That's
Okay.
the
So
very like primal one, right?
yes, it is our one of our first awareness centers as humans, meaning yes, it's what helped us survive. It is instinct. It is the fight or flight that helped us survive and get to the top of the what is it called? Top of the
Food chain.
food chain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll take it.
Mm-hmm. Pyramid. But I
Yeah.
think food chain is what you're going
Yeah.
for.
And the splenic response, it's an intuitive pulse. It is very much in the moment and it doesn't repeat itself because this is the center that when you were being chased by something that wanted to eat you or you saw it across the field, you were like, I got to go. I got to get out of here. It just gave you that fight or flight, response. That is the spleen. And you don't sit there and try to reason it out or think about it, this kind of response. It's just like, now you got to go. Right. And we still have that instinctual awareness. However, we're no longer, hopefully, being chased that often by things that want to eat us. There are things that definitely endanger our lives that your spleen will speak to you and tell you, no, don't do that. Don't walk down that dark alley. Don't drive 150 miles an hour without proper precautions. It could be fun, but
Like you flash back like you'd been
no,
there
I didn't
before, and
flash
you're
back.
like,
I thought
no.
about it. I was like, I'd like to do that.
There
Big.
are like some places that you can basically like sign up to rent and drive race cars.
Oh, we'll do it. I'm a
Yeah.
good driver. I like to drive, as you know. Well, anyways, so this awareness center can kind of wreak havoc on our daily lives now in our modern world because we don't have those same needs of survival in that sense. But the response is still the same. It's a pulse. It's what is best and healthy for you in the moment, and it doesn't hang around and talk you into it. It tells you once and then it's gone. It's like, I told
You
you.
better pay attention.
Right. But just knowing that it is that in the moment response. And then the emotional solar plexus, as I said, this is more of a clarity over time. And so what does that mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell me. Tell me.
So the solar plexus, the emotional solar plexus, is a motor. We talked about that, right? In one of the 1st episodes.
That was the last episode.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. And this energy that helps move energy through the chart operates in waves. And so there's variations on these waves, and the waves are determined by your definition in the solar plexus. So remember, we talked about definition is where you connect through a channel to another center, and that
Yes.
determines if it's defined or not. So there are these waves of feeling, and you kind of have to wait out a wave to make bigger decisions. So mantra for people with emotional authority is there's no clarity in the now. Splenic, there's clarity. Emotional authority, we have to wait. Why? Well, because you know what a wave looks like on a sine wave? Is that what they got? Where,
Oh,
it
I
goes
don't
up and
know,
down?
but yeah, I'll wave.
Yeah. So if you were looking at a sound wave or, it goes up, it goes down, and it's usually like a vibration of energy. You see it has ups and downs, ups and downs. And then if you were to draw a line
You
through
keep
the
hitting
middle
your
point.
mic.
I know, because
Keep
I talk
hitting
with
it.
my hands.
But not only that, I think you keep hitting the cord, so I keep hearing that too.
No, I shouldn't be because
Even when your hands are like, maybe it's you hitting your mic and I don't see it, but it's like when your hands are here
do you hear
and
that?
lower. No,
Okay.
it's hitting them.
I'll wave my hands above my head.
Start signaling for help.
I am a hand talker. There's a reason for that. Gesturing is important. Ooh, which I'm very excited about. We're going to do an episode on that one day about how the brain works and really cool things. Anyways, so where was I?
Sound waves.
Oh, yeah. So if you were to look at a vibrational wave, sound wave, vibration, and it has the undulations up and down, if you were to draw a line through the middle, gives you the baseline, basically. It's what, a baseline of energy is. I hope that makes sense. So, people with emotional authority, the emotional solar plexus, since it operates in waves, there is no truth in the now because you may be in the high part of your wave or your low, and that means like emotional energy. And making decisions from a high or a low spot could be inconsistent. So it's important to note half of us have
When
emotional authority and half of us do not.
when you say emotional authority, do you mean talking about the solar plexus specifically, or is there
Yes.
another way to be an
No.
emotional authority?
No,
Just as
there's
okay.
one way to be an emotional authority is if you are defined in the solar plexus.
Okay.
Okay. And so half of the population is defined in the solar plexus and half is not. And so you can see also how relationally over time that can create a lot of confusion with people, disagreements in relationships because some of us can move fast and some of us can't. There's a lot of reasons for that also besides just emotional authority, but that's the biggest one is that it's not correct for our decision making, which also can contribute to the reason why so many people are experiencing or in things that just they're not happy because they entered into it either rushed or incorrectly. They didn't feel good about it. They didn't trust their body's response to what was correct for them. And that's really what is so awesome about learning about human design is because it gets us out of our heads for decision making because we are intellectual beings. We do think and we reason, and the mind is for processing and questioning, but it's not for making decisions because every time your mind makes a decision, it will then also come up with a reason why that's the wrong decision, or maybe I didn't make the right decision. It's just constant questioning, which I'm sure you're familiar with your defined head. All
Oh
the
yes.
questions. So human design, especially with authority, helps us when it can pinpoint for you and show you what kind of authority, what kind of either sensation or mechanism you should be working with when making decisions, big and small. You can see how it could start to help you make things that are in line with what's correct for your energy. Did I say that right? Did I say that okay?
I didn't exactly follow it, so
You're not listening to me.
I don't. There was a lot of words in there.
It happens. I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, so the biggest difference we said between splenic authority and emotional authority, reactive versus deliberate decision making. And then if you have emotional authority, no matter what type you are, you're going to have some sort of wave.
How do you know when, so you don't go into a low or, go past your ideal
Right.
decision point?
You're right. Because since there are ups and downs, you want to be entering in or answering from that baseline point. And so in order to do that, you have to wait through a cycle, at least one cycle of a wave. So that's how why it's important to start paying attention to that. So it'll play out a little different for each type. But the truth is, if it's a yes, you feel a yes, it has to stay a yes over time. So, like, say you're offered a job or you're offered a new position at your job. And when you first offered it, depending on your type, it might be a yes. But you say, thank you for the opportunity. Can I get back to you tomorrow? At least give yourself time at least 24 hours or just sleeping on it. Like sleeping on it is the best thing ever because it'll save you a lot of time and a lot of money in the long run by saying yes to things that you then later regret because depending on how where you were on your wave. And I would say for myself, this is what has cured me from shiny object syndrome. Knowing that I am emotional authority and that I cannot or I should not make decisions like that in the moment. I have definitely made purchases, committed to things that I probably shouldn't have, mainly purchases. FOMO, you know?
Yeah.
I hate to use such trendy, clever, maybe it's not even trendy anymore, FOMO, to say that, but
Yeah, I don't know if it is.
you tell me, 25-year-old.
I don't know. You should ask Ian. He's
Yeah,
more
he'd
up on
probably
the
tell
internet.
us anything we talk about is not cool to talk about.
He's too cool for us.
It's too cool. But yeah, we're taught that we need to make these snap decisions. Everybody should know what they want in the moment. If it's a hell yes, go for it. Right then, right there. Don't hesitate. Strike while the iron's hot, right? Well, for half the people on this planet,
Sounds like a generator.
no, not necessarily. For half the people on this planet, it's a bad idea. Because,
Hello.
yeah. You've got splenic authority. I have emotional authority. So this is one of those areas that let's discuss. So again, if you are presented with an opportunity and it's a yes, wait it out. But if during that time when you're like, oh, you said yes, but then you're like, well, maybe yes. And you just, maybe over a 24-hour period or a couple days, if you have time to think about something, you feel yourself talking yourself into it, reasons why you should take the opportunity, or maybe it won't be that bad. I said yes. Do I really mean yes? Like if you're all over the place, that's not something you should probably say yes to. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So because if you do enter into something that you are all over the place, your decision making, probably your experience of that then will be all over the place. Whatever you enter into, you'll always have highs and lows because our authorities are here to tell us what's right for us. And what's right for us is pulling us in the direction of what we want, what we really want. That magnetic monopole is attracting to us what we really want. And if we aren't really paying attention to what feels good to us and what we really want, and we're getting really clear on that, then we're going to get a hodgepodge of everything. And then that's why people feel uncertain. I know I certainly did a lot. So yes, best thing, emotional, start plotting your waves. It is hard to tease out my emotional wave because I know I can be an emotional person, but not a hysterical emotional person. But I think that comes from years of practicing self-awareness because
I don't really see you as like you're not an emotional person. That doesn't mean you're not like
moody.
You're not affectionate or yeah, you're not like no, you don't have weird mood swings or anything like that. I would say you're pretty consistent.
Well, that's good because you're not emotional, so you would pick up on that. If you could probably tell me better than I can what my moods are because you can feel that energy from me when we're in contact, Which I've been trying to notice that. I've been trying to pay attention to that when we're actually in the same room with each other because you live
Me and you
2
physically?
hours. Yeah. Because we're here together now, but we always get along just fine, the two of us. But I've been noticing, especially like the last time you were home, how I've been noticing now, like when I don't know if we were eating dinner or something, you, me, your dad, your brother, and I think Presley, your fiance, was there last time you were here. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How much more intensely you got annoyed with your father. And, we love him dearly, but he annoys me a bit. I mean, let's face it, we've been together for like 30 years. So there's going to be personality things that I try to temper. I can feel myself maybe doing it too much. So I try to pull back. But that's when you ramp up. And I noticed it. That'll be like, Haley, stop.
I
And
know
that's
you.
why. And
You
I'm like,
fussed at me,
maybe
and
I
I
need
was
to
like,
stop because you were getting hot.
he was really annoying.
You were getting hot. I was like, Haley, come on.
I know you fussed at me, and I was like, he's just really annoying.
That's my fault, probably. It's probably my fault. Because people with emotional energy, they do hold the emotional energy. They're responsible for the emotional energy in the room. And I not, like I said, I don't think your dad has emotional authority. Ian does, and Presley does not. So Ian and I, in that group, we're holding the emotional authority, the emotional energy in the room.
You're
So
holding us all hostage.
luckily we're both pretty low key.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I
so
mean, 9 times out of 10, we all get together, get along. We all get together, get along.
we get along very well. We do. We enjoy each other's company.
We have fun.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's dive into by type what authorities each type can have and how that might be experienced to the best of my ability to kind of tease it out right now.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. It's an adventure.
Okay. So manifestors, as we talked about, they have the strategy of informing. And we also talked about how they have their own internal creative flow. They have an internal process. So they're not responding to things necessarily outside of them for knowing when to initiate, okay, for them to get into action. And so manifestors can have essentially 3 different types of authority. They could have emotional authority, and it can be kind of intense with emotional manifestors. Their emotions tend to run a little bit intensely because, again, this is all very internal process for manifestors. And they will still, even though they can initiate and to get into action, if they have an emotional authority, they do have to have an awareness of what their wave is so that they're not jumping into action when it's not really the right time for them. It's not outside world that's telling them. It's very much an internal process for them. So they still have to, because when a lot of times you'll hear people would wish they're manifestors because they don't have to wait for anything and they just do whatever they want. But it's not really true. I think if you take the fact that 9% of the population are manifestors, okay, so that's a small group, and then generally half of them are going to be emotional. So that means there's a smaller, like 4% ish.
4.5.
Yeah. And even smaller than that, because 4.5, okay, so they're not emotional, so they're more in the moment, but then we'll break it down to 2 more authorities. So it gets down to a very small percentage of people on the planet that are designed to act. And yet the whole world revolves around, at least in our culture, in the Western world and America, revolves around just do it. So half of them are meant to wait. Oh, I forgot one important part. If we're going to rank authorities by what has the most authority, like hierarchy of authorities, I guess, ranking what's emotional is always first. So no matter what your type is, if you look at the chart and your solar plexus is defined, you have emotional authority. That's it. That is your top dog authority. It rules your life. Okay.
So, can you have multiple authorities?
No. You could have multiple definite. I mean, yes and no. That was a quick. Okay. So that was a quick like generator sacral response.
Yeah.
Because no, but it's kind of no. And this kind of applies here with manifestors and generators. You'll see what I mean. So say that a manifestor does not have a defined solar plexus, so they're not emotional, but they're defined through the will center to the throat. Okay, or will center through the G center to the throat, whatever it is. The will center is the main motor that is generating that. because the hierarchy would say emotional solar plexus, the will center, the ego center, and the for a manifester. And
It sounds like more of a flow chart.
well, it's Bodygraph. It is a chart
Well,
in a
so
way.
no, so you're saying if your solar plexus is defined, you're emotional. If it's
Mm-hmm.
not, then you're moved to the next one, which is the G center. If that's defined, then
No,
you're
no,
what now? Then whatever
for a
you
manifester.
which one? Willpower, whatever one you just said.
All right, let me back it up. Okay.
Yes.
Manifester. This is just for manifester. Emotional, ego manifested, or what they call splenic authority in a manifester. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not emotional, they're going to be one of these other two. And
Mm-hmm.
for a manifester, this is. And that would be the will center. Again, it's also called the ego center. So it'll be called ego manifested. This is all about the energy on the material plane. So a manifester with this kind of authority is going to be responding to clues in the material plane. Still, it's not the same as a generator that needs to wait to respond to things. It's just more of a manifester will get more clues when their ego manifested like this from that it's the right time. They'll just see things. They know it's the right time. It's a confirmation of the right time for them, but it doesn't rule their timing. And it also informs them if they have the energy to initiate, because that motor center works to rest. It like empties like a gas tank. If you deplete it, you got to fill it back up before it'll kick in again.
Remind me again what all the motors are.
Hmm?
There's the I said the motors is the root,
Mm-hmm.
the sacral,
Mm-hmm.
the solar plexus, and
Mm-hmm.
the will center.
You got it. Okay. So, as we know, manifestors do not have a defined sacral center.
Right.
So, the next authority, you can't see the quotation marks again, would be a splenic authority for a manifester. So, that the only way for a manifester to have splenic authority is if they
Is
are
if the
defined from
root.
the root, goes through the spleen to the throat. That is true splenic authority for a manifester. And that, the root, is not very consistent either. You don't know when it's going to give that pulse of energy that's needed, the timing of in the now. So that is very much a manifester needing to be, it's probably one of the easier authorities. Authority is pretty complicated for a manifester because they are like very much internal. They have to be really clued into their own internal world and how they operate to know when to move into action. Which is probably why so many disastrous things in history, probably from manifestors that were just acting when they shouldn't have, conquering nations and shit like that. Anyways, I digress. So, if they have splenic authority, they'll get that pulse. It'll feel right because it's going through the spleen. They can feel that it's the right time. This is the right thing to do. This feels good. Boom, they can go into action right away. But if they're defined for the emotional solar plexus, they're going to have to kind of wait through that wave a little bit longer. It can be I can imagine it's got to be really frustrating to be an emotional manifester to like
Yeah.
want to go and know you can, but also you've got to just make sure you're in the right space, basically, you know. And if your ego manifests, they have to figure out if they're at the right energy. So, anyways, that's the basics. Sorry if I complicated it. It's a harder one to understand, I think,
I'm
for
still confused
manifestors.
on whether it's a hierarchy or a flow chart.
Well, I think it's more of a hierarchy because no matter what type you are, if you have emotional authority, that is going to be the number one authority. Okay.
No, but you said that emotionally will be the number one authority, but you can't have more than one authority.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm confused how it can be the number one authority when you can't have more than one authority.
Maybe it's the way I said it. Well, okay. I understand what you're saying. I understand the confusion. So you are going to have a dominant authority as if you're emotionally defined, right? Because that's what
You
we've
mean
determined.
dominant as in not like that authority as the emotional one is dominant. It'll what?
Yeah. Well, I think
It'll
if we move on to generators, it'll
what
help
makes
clarify
sense.
this.
Okay. Okay.
Because I can use myself again as an example. Okay.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on. I'll
Okay.
see if I still have questions.
Okay.
The same question.
So the generator. Okay. So the generators can have a couple different as well, but mainly it's going to be emotional or it's going to be a sacral splenic response. Okay. Hang with me. That
Okay.
is because, again, if you look at a chart and you're a generator and if you have your solar plexus defined, you are emotional, full stop. Even though you have sacral authority that gives you that yes or no sacral response in the moment,
hmm
that is not the end of the story there for your decision making for the bigger things, right? I mean, it is for what do you want to eat, but it's not for, should I buy that couch? It's like, let me think about it.
hmm
Okay. So this is where you can see the hierarchy because I'm emotionally defined, but I have a sacral center, which is also an authority for generators because you can be a generator and have a sacral authority and not be emotional, right? So, like Presley has a sacral authority. And what they also, you'll see it on the chart sometimes, they call it a pure generator because that sacral response is the in the moment, yes or no, is the final decision point for a generator. Their sacral will tell them yes or no. And I
hmm
know you've seen that. Okay,
Yes.
there's no wishy washy there.
No. No.
And I mean, they could have a no and still proceed as a yes, going against their authority, but their authority is their sacral yes or no. And the more they can, tap into that, the better they'll be. But, and then you might also see on a chart as a generator, it might say that you're a splenic generator because you might have a definition to your spleen as well, with sacral, spleen, or even the root going through to the spleen. In that
hmm
sense, again, that sacral center is a dominant motor over the root, So, and the spleen isn't a motor, so it's not going to make any decision there. The sacral response in a generator and a splenic response are kind of very much feel the same. They're the same kind of thing, right? Because the sacral is like yes or no, that's good or not. It's not gonna,
hmm
your sacral response is not gonna lead you to something that's not good for you. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
So that's what I mean by the hierarchy. Because okay, I have emotional authority, I'm a generator, and I'm defined in the spleen.
It's a
But that's,
trifecta.
yeah, no root. But that does mean that I am, even though those other two centers are defined, my emotional authority is the number one dominant authority for me. I have to, even though I get intuitive hits or, so I could play it out like I get an intuitive hit, my sacral says yes or no. And if it says yes and I get really excited, like, oh, pay attention to that because I've been thinking about this and then that showed up and ooh, that's confirmation. Yes, it feels good. Well, I still have to wait.
Gotta ride the wave.
I gotta ride the wave and make sure. And I mean, I at least gotta wait. Like I said, I've really gotten better at not feeling I have to make decisions, important decisions right away. That I can now give myself a little bit more time to make decisions to see how I really feel about them. And that's a tremendous, tremendous help. So,
I wonder if that is like have the feeling of having to say have an answer to things right away, if that's more of a issue in the US compared to other places.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do think, yeah, I think we know that experience here. Definitely think life moves at a slower pace in other parts of the world. And so maybe they are given that grace of more time to think about things. But yeah, there's something definitely in the American culture of you
Gotta
must
go, 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 go.
be decisive. If you're
Give me an
indecisive,
answer.
you're weak. Like, where did that come from? Like, really? Probably from somebody who didn't have emotional authority.
Probably not. It was
Maybe
probably a
not.
it was probably a splenic manifester.
What's wrong with you people? Why can't you make any
Just do
decisions?
it. Give me an answer.
Yeah. Because there's no one person that definitely came up with that idea or cultural influence for sure. But it is interesting. Okay, so we've covered that. So manifesting generators, again, they could be emotional as well or sacral in the moment.
So can every type except for a reflector have an emotional
Yes, I
authority?
said that earlier, but yes,
You
they
did.
can.
You
I
did
did.
probably.
Yeah, I
Okay.
did. But I
Continue.
throw a lot at you, so,
I
you
got a
know,
recap in my head.
understand. That's what you're here for. Otherwise, I'm just filling the world with more noise. Hopefully not. So, yes, the thing about MGs, manifesting generators, if they have sacral response, is fast. I mean, it is fast in the moment, and they're out the door before you even know they're gone. And I believe that's your father because
Probably.
he has sacral. I mean, he has that channel 3420, which links the sacral center directly to the throat. So that can put them into action fast. Like they said, you could pose the question, do you want to go to dinner? And they get up and they're out the door before they're like, wait a minute, do I want to go to dinner? So if a manifesting generator has sacral, that's going to be their main response. If they also have a defined will center, which, you think a manifesting generator has to have a sacral defined, but it doesn't necessarily have to be what motors the throat. It could
Right, because
be,
the sacral is what defines a generator.
yes. Yeah. So they could have like a generator, excuse me, sacral to say root definition, but then separately they could have their will center, which is also a motor, connected to the throat.
Is
So
that
so somebody may be like, well, they're an ego. No, they're not. They're a sacral, you know, uh, sacral authority because that motor is more powerful than the will center is. So, the only thing that could, maybe influence that is that they might not get a sacral response if their will center is if they're like burned out or tired, since that will center is a motor that has to
so that
be
was the gas tank.
re-energized. Yeah. So the only way it might influence the manifesting generator is if they're kind of burned out. They might not get much of a sacral response on something, but their sacral is still their authority if they're non-emotional. If they are emotional, then what we talked about, they're going to have to, as hard as it's going to be for them, they're going to have to they'll get the yes or no, but before they get out the door, before they tell it, they have to actually sleep on it. And that again can be a challenge for manifesting generators. But, these challenges are not here to punish anyone or just make it more difficult for the sake of making it more difficult for people. It's really a gift to determine if they're going to have the energy to commit to whatever it is they're being asked of, because that sacral energy can say yes to things that aren't right for it, and that leads to burnout over time because they could be doing work that just doesn't light them up, or they could be entered into
Yeah.
relationships that don't work for them. So okay, projectors.
So manifesting generators, it's either you have an emotional authority or your sacral authority.
Pretty much, yeah,
Okay.
because there are other motors, but that sacral is going to override them.
Okay.
Yeah, same for generators. The sacral is going to override them. Generator though won't have will center to the throat or anything like that. But anyways, overcomplicating things.
Hmm.
All right, so projectors.
My favorite.
Yes. And so generally, projectors can have different types of authorities. And this is where I think it gets nuanced out to like you'll hear a bunch of different types of authorities for projectors. But they're, again, can be emotional. Half of them are going to be emotional, and then the other half are going to be a little variation. So, like, you are splenic,
Hmm.
you are defined from your root to your spleen. So, that gives you definition. And do you remember when I told you that? When I told you about splenic definition, about what that you don't?
No. I know that you told me one time that for making decisions, I have to make sure that at least before I make the decision that I am just by myself to not be like
Well, it does
interacting with
help
other
you.
people.
It does
Yeah.
help you. Well, okay. So, projectors, to really tune into their authority, and even this, this goes for projectors, reflectors, and people with non-motorized throats, generators. We do all tend to, on top of whatever authority we have, need to talk things out a lot of times, kind of have a sounding board, but more so for projectors and reflectors, because there's not necessarily that sacral response or the emotional, not the emotional authority. They don't have the sacral response, I should say, to assist with that knowingness, that you need to talk things and sound things out, just see how you're feeling about things. And it's not the same as asking people for advice. You don't necessarily want advice. You just want to talk about what your choices are, what you're thinking about, right?
Hmm.
So, again, if they are emotional, as we said earlier, if you get an invitation, you have to wait out the wave to see if the desire is still there to accept the invitation stays the same. So
Hmm.
if there's any, I'll give you an example. Was a friend of mine. She was trying to transition into a different type of career, right? And she was not necessarily finding the invitation she wanted there yet, but she was contacted by someone she used to know, a colleague or past client, that wanted her services for what she used to do. She was really good at, but it wasn't what she wanted to do anymore. She had an emotional authority. So, with that invitation, she had to wait and see how she felt about it, because the mind would get in the way. She even talked to me about it. Again, having to sound it out of, well, it's an invitation. I should take it, right? Because I'm a
Hmm.
projector. I got invited. That means it must be correct for me. Well, no, it doesn't. Not all invitations have to be accepted.
Hmm.
That's where the emotional authority and clarity would help determine that. If over a couple days or whatever, if they have time to think about it and feel into it and it doesn't feel right, don't accept it, and then it'll be fine. Same though with good invitations. If she's also talked to me about good things that have come up and wants to talk it out and feels good about it. And if she's had several days that she's been going over it and talking about it and thinking about it, and it still feels like a real yes to her, then that's probably good for her. Okay.
Yeah.
So splenic authority, as you, gives you a boost in decision making in between big decisions as well. Because probably for you with bigger things with splenic authority, you're going to need to talk out bigger decisions with people you trust, just to get and it's really to hear yourself and hear how you think about it, which also goes into the other types of authorities you'll hear about with projectors. You'll hear about self-projected or mental projected authorities, and those are projectors that, see, there's too many of them. That's why they're very simple, waiting or not waiting, right? But those are projectors that don't have any definition, like below the G center. They don't have any motors or any of that, right? Those are the more mental projector types. They will have to talk
Because
things out.
because the projector is no motorized throat and no sacral
Correct.
definition.
Right. So they could just have head and ajna defined. They could have throat nausea defined, but no motors. So this is where it gets a little too nuanced for me. And I think it makes it too complicated. I think as a projector, either you have emotional authority, splenic authority, and if you don't have either ones, you're just going to be talking things out, especially with bigger decisions. I think with no matter what authority you have as a projector, you're going to be using that time either as you write out the wave to make for the bigger decisions. But for like splenic, someone like you kind of have a little bit easier, quote unquote, than some other types of projectors, because you do have that little bit of a gut level, yes or no. Should I start taking this supplement? Is it okay for me to eat that today? It's just like, it kind of helps guide you a little bit easier, but still all of big decisions for most projectors, you're just going to have to talk it out over time.
Yes.
Last one, reflectors. So reflectors don't really have an authority because there's nothing internal, because they don't have definition in their chart. So there's nothing internal that helps anchor them into what's right for them. So
Well, they don't have like permanent definition because when the moon goes through, they get some definition. Is that right or no?
Yeah, they can get definition throughout. That's their strategy. That's part of their strategy of waiting out. And so what they say for reflectors is that it's about their authority, which again, I'm doing the
There's air
quotation
quotes.
marks, is about being in the right place, because they need to feel that they are in the right place in order to help them make aligned decisions, because it's all about their environment, the environment that they're in general for reflectors. And so reflectors definitely need trusted, consistent people, couple people in their lives. And they don't have to all, feel the same way, but they need some consistent people in their lives that they can use as sounding boards, because they need to hear their own process through speaking it to other people. And those people can listen and reflect back to them what they're hearing, what they hear the reflector saying, which helps the reflector then gain clarity about what they're thinking and what they're feeling. So
I feel like being a reflector, it sounds hard.
well, I think any type I'm not sounds harder than what I am, because that's how I am.
That's
How
true.
I'm meant to be.
But I feel like, I mean, I don't feel like I have a lot of knowledge about myself, but then like I feel like listening about you explaining like a reflector, I'm like, I just see an empty person.
And that's so not true. Yeah. No, they're actually very full. I mean, because they, like I said, they don't have their own, as you look at it, definition in the chart, but they are literally reflecting back their environment around them all the time. So they actually, I think, a lot of times can come off as very vibrant, intense people, depending on the environment they're in, because that's what they're doing. All this is on the subtle energetic level. I mean, we can learn to tune into it and pay attention to how our bodies feel, which helps gives us clues to what's going on. But so much of it is at a level that we're not aware of. And it's something, you have more openness in your chart than I do. So it's even something that it's good to talk about once you know people's types and where they show up different in their charts, to get an understanding of it, because you can only have your own experience really as yourself. Like I have all my definition. I don't know what it feels like to be open in all these other areas, which I'm really excited to get into the centers, because that is just another one of those layers that really helps, like really help you gain some clarity around it. But really, so all in all, authority is just to support your decision making in tandem with your strategy. So as you're navigating through with your strategy, authority can help you more fine tune those decisions as you wait for your strategy to kick in.
And so like
sense.
big picture on the authority, it's either right in the now, something right now, or it's having to wait for it.
I think so. I mean, people may disagree with me, but that's what I'm gaining a better understanding is that some of us are meant to make decisions a little quicker than others. And neither one is incorrect or correct. It just is.
It's just a different way.
Yeah. And like I said, taking it back to, what is in the moment and what is over time, is it reactionary or is it deliberate? And it's really the evolution of us as human beings. Like I said, the awareness centers, when I talked about earlier about the intuition, or the splenic center, instinct and intuition, that's how we used to make decisions only, was quickly and in the moment. There was not this emotional awareness so much that was informing.
You didn't really have time to be like, well, should I run from this lion? It looks a little dangerous, but maybe it's friendly.
Yeah. And splenic awareness is in all living creatures. It's a energy center that's present, is this this center, this awareness of what is going to help me survive, whether you're a plant or a fish or a person. They all have it. And then what, over time, then we moved into this this mental awareness center, which is what became dominant for so many years, centuries. The thinking mind, the rational mind, is what was informing everything. And that, we went away from this, like, well, only animals act on their instincts, right?
We are civilized.
I am a civilized person. I have a brain and I make decisions with my brain. And this is what we're recovering from now. Well, you think about it, people say, be rational, make a rational decision, make a logical decision. And I think that's also that split between the feminine and the masculine, and the patriarchy is more like, let's be rational and logical about this. Emotions are weak. You don't make emotional decisions, this kind of thing, right? Whereas now we're moving away from even that mental awareness as being our dominant awareness center and this is what has been happening in the last couple of 100 years, of us moving away from this mental awareness to emotional awareness. And that, I think, started happening around that time when everything split in 1781. Ever since then, we've been moving into this more emotionally aware awareness, which will become, as humans, our dominant awareness center, especially, they say, after the big shift happens. And apparently there's another big shift coming in 2027, but we can't go into that now. I still look at your face. You're like, what? So that's
I can't handle anymore.
I know.
Not after 2020.
Oh, it's all going to get better. Don't worry. I have faith. So that's the authorities in a nutshell. Anything else?
I don't think I have anything. I don't sound like a robot, so that's good.
You're ready to take a nap. You're like, I'm ready for a nap now. Going into projector shutdown mode. After
so
you told me you
cloudy.
did how many jumping jacks before we got on today?
A total of 300.
Wow. Pace yourself, darling.
I didn't. I mean, I saw it because it was 10 rounds of 30 jumping jacks, and I didn't do the math until like much later. I was like, I just did 300 jumping jacks.
10 rounds of 30? Good Lord.
10 rounds of 30 jumping jacks and 10 push-ups.
10 rounds of 3 or 3 rounds of 10.
I cannot do both.
The accountant can't do the math. Anyways, all right. So we've reached the end of our show, and our generally so far weak part is how we end the show. But we have this problem. We have this problem in person with each other of knowing when to say goodbye. I'll wave at you at the door for like, okay, she's still outside. Bye.
Our whole family, we have like 7 different times that we will say goodbye.
Yeah. Stages. The big stage.
Yeah. There's the initial one, and that's still usually in wherever we are. And then there's probably usually
gathers.
2 or 3 more there.
And then we get
there's
closer to the door.
Outside.
And then you got to get in the car. And then you got to get the dog in the car. just wave. And then I got to shut the front door. So, I know. We just can't stand it. Anyways.
And
All right. All right. Thanks for listening. Catch you on the next episode. Bye.
bye.
Well, you made it all the way to the end of today's episode, so you must have liked what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and perhaps leave us a good review. And if you know someone who wants to dig into all things human design with us, make sure you share this podcast with them. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Catch you in the next episode.